This is just a short video on a card. The card is from the Klimt Tarot. Well, this is the deck. And this is the box. It's put out by Lo Scarabeo. The art has been altered from the original artist is Gustav Klimt, and it's been altered for the tarot, or not altered, but it's by A.A. Antonasov. Anyways, I bought this deck. It's an art deck. And I bought this deck because Gustav Klimt is my favorite painter. He was painting in Austria at the turn of the century, 1900s. And he was a classically trained painter. And at one point, he and other artists separated from the normal painters co-op or whatever they were, and started a new group. And in his case, he started working with a lot more. He started painting a lot more nudes. Nudes were not popular Victorian times, so he painted a lot of nudes, and he painted with a lot of geometrics and a lot of gold tones and a lot of jewel tone colors. His style is well known, and you can see his work. It's very very common these days to find it in posters and all kinds of purses and socks and all kinds of things that people wear and people put on their walls. So his name is Gustav Klimt. And then I got the deck, and it's a beautiful deck. There is some nudity, but it's just a beautiful deck. There's naked women, naked children, naked men, old men, young men. Actually, I don't know if there's naked young men. There must be, but I don't remember all that. And after you look at a couple of these, you'll see you'll recognize the style that he did. And there's a lot of gold on it, a lot of gold tones. And it's not really. Some of the cards are Rider Waite. Some are. They all have the same elements: the swords for air, and they have chalices for the cups, for the water. They have, I think they have pentacles, and they have wands. So the pentacles are the earth, and the wands are the fire. So that's all the same. And then they still have the knights. There's a Knight of Pentacles. And they still have the King and the Queen and I think they have a Knave. Yeah, and they have a Knave instead of a Page. Anyways, it's readable and everything. Very artsy-fartsy, which I love. But there was a problem. My problem was with this one card. It's called the Fool. The Fool is the first card in the tarot, and it's also considered the last card in the tarot. I was doing some painting today. I painted my dining room today. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. Anyways, I got a lot done. So the Fool is the beginning of the tarot and the end of the tarot. It's a number 0, and most Fools are younger, maybe adolescent people, or younger people than that, maybe childlike or childish people, and they're happy, and they're on a new adventure, and it's a card that's very optimistic, and it shows a character, a person that's curious and optimistic and ready to take on his travel, the Fool's Journey, which is what the tarot is about. So when I saw this card in the deck, I was sort of like, what is going on here? And I thought, well, maybe this is the guy at the end of the journey. But it's not the end of the journey, because I think the end of the journey would be, they don't really, usually the end of the journey in most decks is the Fool, which is the child again. In other words, you go full cycle. So you start out as a child of adolescent. We're talking about a spirit, spirit energy. And then you go back to that same energy, kind of a spirit energy. This is not, to me, this doesn't say that at all. This shows a very, it's a naked old man. He looks like he's not doing well. He doesn't look like he's been fed. He's got his head in his hands. He looks like he's suffering of some kind. Maybe it's intellectual, maybe it's spiritual, maybe it's emotional. He doesn't look like he's curious. He doesn't look optimistic. He doesn't look like he's ready for a challenge. He doesn't look like any of those things. So I had a problem with this. And I mean, there are always pictures in decks that, you're thinking, this is not so great. I don't like this or that. But this was kind of a deal breaker for me. I didn't know how to read it, and I wasn't. So what happened was I love the deck, but I haven't been reading with it because I didn't want to pull this card out. I want to keep the card in because it is the Fool. But since I didn't know how to read it, and I was kind of like, I don't know, who wants to see this if I pull it for somebody? So I kind of figured, well, I'm just going to use the deck as sort of an artistic deck for maybe my own, for inspiration for my own art. So that was my plan. And then just in the last couple days, I decided, that's a pretty picture, to consider this card again and say, what is this card really saying? Well, after some time looking at it and thinking about it, I came up with an explanation. I should first read the book, because when I did first see this card, I said, well, what does the book say? And the book says, lack of points of reference, loss of identity, confusion. So that short little, basically keywords did define this person. And ironically, or interestingly enough, if you have it upside down, it means rebirth, stripping oneself completely, letting go of excess, which is more like the actual Fool. So anyways, I started considering this card and thinking, well, how can I read it? And then I had an idea, and I just wanted to share my idea with anyone who's interested in maybe looking at cards that you have, your own cards that you have that you're just not having trouble with. What I did with this card, I considered it from a past, present, and future sort of viewpoint. So here's the past on the left. So I'm reading it from left to right. Here's the past on the left, and it's dark skies, muddied dirt, or just very dark. And then, so he's coming from a very dark place, and here he is right here, and he looks like he's come from a trial or tribulations, and he's got his head in his hands, and he looks like he's not doing well, and he's older. You can tell his gray hair. But then over here, right next to him on the side, is going from past, present to future. We have this beautiful profusion of colors and golds and curvy lines and circles and Fibonacci curves and triangles, and just full of color and life. And I thought, well, maybe what this card means is he comes from trials and tribulations, and he's dealing with it the best he can. And all he has to do is, in the future, there's hope. There's all this other this dynamic future for him. And all he has to do is, take away his hands from his eyes and look to the side and see what's waiting for him. And so that gave me hope for this gentleman, and that kind of makes sense for a Fool at the end of the journey. So I can still read it as a Fool at the end of the journey, where he's transitioning into very like a worldly card, the happiness and bright lights and happy continuation. It's not doom and gloom. So the future is very bright. I almost see this also too as this, with all these geometrics, almost like subatomic particles, where it could be like the beginning of life again, like something that's very, very, very in a small, minute sense of love, of energy. In other words, energy is surrounding this part. So he's coming out of the journey, and he's entering a phase of new energy. So that all of a sudden made the fool not fool at the end of the journey as opposed to the beginning of the journey. And I think I can now read it because of that. So the way I saw it. Anyways, I just wanted to share that with you. Those are my dogs. So I think I'll tie it up for now. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.